The National Planning Commission has said, look, firstly, one of the things you've got to do is declare this crisis an emergency. And that ticks a number of boxes, right? From security to the removal of red tape to try and beef up the grid as quickly as possible.
That's right. Morning, Bongani. Morning to you and to your listeners. Yes, so I think the National Planning Commission is of the view that until we deal with load shedding, the overall goals of the National Development Plan in relation to an inclusive and growing economy and a thriving country can't be met. And so it is one of the single greatest impediments to being able to achieve the NDP. And in that context, we set out last week a set of measures that we think that should be taken that would, over the next 2 years, ensure that significant new capacity is brought onto the grid in order to address load shedding. I can go into the specifics of that, but essentially a lot of it is about removing a lot of the bureaucratic obstacles that are in the way, and then being able to allow a lot of the private sector build that is waiting in the wings, that is in various pipelines, to be built as rapidly as possible.
Joanne, we're going to go into some of those specifics in our conversation, but Chris, let's talk about this declaration of this as an emergency. What does that immediately allow?
Well, look, I'm not sure exactly the powers of government, but I do believe government has significant powers in emergency situations. Step one is to acknowledge that it's an emergency and declare it. Step two is to put in place, I think, suitable structures, and I'm not suggesting that I know all the answers there, but I think suitable structures can be set up and empowered to remove unnecessary blockages, as Joanne has clearly articulated, and to lift regulations, at least temporarily, to deal with this emergency, regulations that are not helpful and are holding things back, as well as to put in place regulations temporarily to facilitate new generation capacity coming on stream fast.
Yeah.
And so one has to at least acknowledge and empower the situation so that such a structure can continue with the necessary work in a proper, organized way, a consultative way, complying with all the aspects of the law.
Joanne, you guys have called for an emergency command council, much like we saw during COVID. But as Chris points out, if you're going to have such a structure, you also need to make sure that the people on it are best qualified and are specialists at dealing with the problem. So far, we've seen both at Eskom and at the Department of Enterprises, of Public Enterprises, many of the people tasked with dealing with this crisis aren't themselves electricity experts.
Okay, so I think that we didn't recommend any structures. What we talked about was the need to declare an energy emergency and then to be able to utilize that declaration to open up the way. I think we also referenced the work that has been done, for example, by Operation Vulindlela in the presidency, who's already been working to remove some of those blockages. And I think that there are initiatives that are underway in Eskom, for example, around their land lease scheme that potentially offers some rapid solutions. So we feel that we should bring all of the capacity in the country together. I think this is a call in calling for an energy emergency. What we're saying is that everybody who can contribute to solutions needs to be brought together and needs to be brought together in a coordinated way to be able to address this national crisis.
702.
More than a radio station.
Let's walk the talk.